Hello everyone, Travis here, and welcome back to my channel. We are back in the Mega Park today, and if you remember right, we were working over on this Rapids ride last time with surrounding buildings and structures and whatever. And yeah, so today we're going to be working in this area again, but we're going to be up on top of this hill for a good portion of today's video. Actually, I think the whole video. And we'll be adding in a bobsled coaster. So for those of you who have been watching the last few episodes, like, where the heck are all the rides at? I know I had said, like, maybe an episode or two ago that that we, like, didn't really have very many rides left to add, which is true in the grand scheme of things, but this whole section was pretty much non-existent. So we have, at least 2 or 3 more rides in this area, along with the whole, plethora of buildings and structures to accompany those rides and the themed area as a whole. But I'm just right now putting the top of this mountain together. I don't actually finish the terrain, like the terraforming today. I mentioned in my Roller Coaster Tycoon versus Planet Coaster video a couple weeks ago that I just can't stand terraforming in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. And that's, just personal preference. I like the terrain editor in Planet Coaster better, but it seems like some of the reactions I got to that were pretty mixed. I like the ability to sculpt and, make realistic looking mountains and just have control over shape and, every minor detail down to the most subtle of elevation changes and whatever. But, in Roller Coaster Tycoon 2, there's obviously, you kind of have to leave things a little bit open to interpretation just because of the grid system and, the fact that it's a 20-year-old game or whatever. But in general, I know some people who just do really, really amazing, incredible things with terrain in this game. Definitely not my strong suit. So bear with me when it comes to that. I got a comment, I think on episode 7 or 8 or something of this series that that I needed more terrain, that I was building way too flat of a park. And so I started at that point adding different levels to the park. And I think it's looking pretty good. In general, I think the park has a natural looking shape to it. As I come closer to finishing it in the coming weeks, more and more of those little things will be added to create layers and textures to the overall look of it. Okay, so getting the layout of this this bobsled coaster was actually surprisingly easy. I know for sure that the layout that is shown to you at the end of this video that I start theming and stuff is not going to be the final layout. I've actually already made one kind of minor change to it off camera between the recording of this footage and now. But there's one more area that I might be changing, and it's just because there's a little bit of a long stretch of straight track that kind of bugs me. And it has to do with the fact that it's over the top of the terrain and I can't really go down. And of course, in a bobsled coaster, you can't do a lot of airtime hills and things like that because your train will literally fly off the track. But I think in general, this layout's pretty good. Maybe not the most realistic ever. There aren't a lot of these to compare to. The only one I've ever been on is the one at Six Flags Over Texas, the La Vibora or whatever one. And, there are only a few others, I think, that even exist in real life nowadays. So, there's not a lot of rules on creating, realistic layouts. Someone is going to comment, yes, there is. It has to have this, this, and this. You're so dumb. But anyway. But whatever the case, I like the layout of this coaster as it is. But, that's kind of a subjective thing. At the end of the day, anyway. Some people like big, wild, crazy, unrealistic, whatever type layouts. Other people want it to be exactly like the manufacturer would create it. I'm somewhere in between, I suppose. I want it to look realistic, have a realistic presence in the park, but then some of the elements and things that I use can be more creative and interpretive, depending on, how I'm feeling that day. Or whatever the case. It's not going to stay this red and yellow color. I think probably in the thumbnail you could tell. I'm going for what would be like a wooden version of it, and I'm going to do some custom supports and stuff on it that are going to take me hours and hours and hours, but it just looks so good on this coaster. And that a lot of that will probably be done off camera just because it's so time consuming, so tedious. But of course, we will watch this area develop from episode to episode, and anything that's done off camera will be shown to you, at the beginning of each episode or whatever the case. And yeah. So the station to this coaster is pretty good. It definitely needs more detailing at the end of the episode, so I know I'm going to be tweaking it in the next few episodes as we go along. I obviously incorporated the path into the building, which is really how it's done in real life. You'd obviously go into the building and there'd be different themed areas or theming inside that would get you prepared for the ride experience as a whole. Then you would drop down into the station, which of course would obviously be also indoors in that same building. So yeah, that's kind of the look and feel I was going for. Also, the paths in this game are pretty wide in general, so to put a lot of them indoors helps to cover that up, and so that I don't have to do a lot of outdoor theming and path coverings and things to make them look more realistic. As mentioned in throughout this whole series, but especially recently, even though my build style has changed since the beginning of this series, I'm still not going for realism necessarily. I'm going for semi-realism or just something that if you squint your eyes would look realistic maybe. This is still a mega park, and I think at the end of the day, one of the big things about a mega park is that it's supposed to be bigger, better, greater, faster, taller coasters, an overall less realistic approach when it comes to this game. And so if I suddenly change things up now and I'm it's going to be 100% realistic and everything's going to be to scale and it's I'm going to recreate actual real life rides and blah blah blah, then it defeats the purpose of this series, the intent of this series, and creates a lot more work that I'm just not willing to do in this project, because obviously all of these ideas and things that I just mentioned can be done in future projects, and we can look at that as a direction maybe to go in with the channel at large. But I don't want to become a certain type of builder in this game necessarily. There's a lot of build styles, a lot of different things that you can do. Obviously I use a lot of custom scenery, but heck, maybe at one point in the future I'll do a no custom scenery object park or something, just to mix things up and just to hone my skills and have fun with a game that I play a lot. When you're playing a game constantly, you reach a point potentially where you get bored with it for a while, and then you go through, I know for me, I go through these rolling phases of I love this game this week, and then next week I can't stand to even look at it and I'm so over it. So I have to vary what I do in this game in order to stay motivated to play it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, I see other builders and other players and even myself at times have fallen off. I can think of a few YouTubers that a couple years ago were really, really active and creating content regularly and whatever. Some of them are friends of mine, and you eventually just lose interest. And not to call anyone in particular out, but I was talking to Chargels the other day, and he was saying that he completely uninstalled the game. He was so unmotivated to do anything in this game and burnt out in playing it that he just uninstalled it from his computer and didn't even look at it for months and months on end. And I think recently he reinstalled it for the purposes of voting and stuff in the Discord server, which is linked in the description below. All of your old favorites are there. Well, not all of them, but most of them. But anyway, and I'm still not sure if he actually even plays the game these days. But eventually, I imagine that he'll get re-inspired to do something in this game again, and then we'll see something from him. Maybe not on YouTube. I think he's done with YouTube. But in the Discord community, the Roller Coaster Tycoon community as a whole, we might see some stuff from him at some point. Like, I would love to maybe do like a redo of the Falls, which was the very first collaboration park that I ever did, and one of the very first. Actually, I think it was the second series like that I ever had on this channel. And so, looking back at some of the stuff, like, it's funny, like, to see how far we've come as builders in this game, as content creators in this game. But at the same time, I do look at some things in that park and think, man, like, that was, like, why am I not doing that anymore? Like, that was a cool thing that I used to do. Or, I look at some of his stuff and go, man, like, he put a lot of work into that building. The contrast in the build styles in that park is pretty interesting. And but I think we did a pretty decent job of getting those to fit together pretty well. Even though the park as a whole was a little bit quote unquote lower quality than some of the stuff I'm working on nowadays. But it was a fun project, and I still like the Falls and Quick Draw Quarry, and those earlier collaborations are still some of my favorite like projects that I've done on YouTube. And so some of the newer collaborations are they're great. Like I have that Studios Park with Wantera, and we were doing the Europe Park for a while, which is finished now, and then that Seasons Park fell apart completely. Like, I don't even think that's going to be a thing for a really long time, if not ever. And the thing about collaborations like that, especially when you're dealing like with working with multiple people, is like staying consistent and working with other people's schedules. And that was one thing that Charles and I had a hard time with Europe, is that like halfway through, the availability of some people changed, others like weren't really motivated to play, and whatever. And so it became just me and Charles for a while, and then even I sort of like fell off the project for a little bit because I didn't really like the scenery selection and overall like way that park was going at the time. And then the map was just huge. Like I think it was like 180 by 180 or something. And, obviously it ended up being like 80% Charles, 20% everyone else. And I was like the second largest contributor to that. But going back to the Studios Park that I'm working on with Wantera is, we both kind of were really excited and motivated at first. And then that hit at a time when both of us kind of lost motivation and interest in the game at large. And so that one's not completely off the table. I do plan to visit that again at some point when we're both ready to take a look at that project again. I know he's sort of waiting on me to finish the entrance because I, more or less started it. So the next episode, the ball is in my court. So whenever I actually decide to do something in that park, that's when that will maybe start up again. But the thing is, we both have to be motivated to work on it, because I don't like projects and series on YouTube that go really strong for a while and then just die out completely for months and months and months, and then they come back expecting everybody to be like right on board with it again, and then only to be intermittent with it again. Like it's a little bit frustrating. And that's not a jab at anyone at all, like, myself included in that. I've obviously done that like for the whole existence of my channel. Like, welcome back to the Mega Park. I know it's been, 7 months since I posted. I hope you guys still are interested. Life happens. A lot of us are in college and, have daily jobs and whatever. So it's just something that kind of comes and goes if you're not able to do YouTube full time. But it's all good. And as you guys have noticed, I've been trying to be a lot more consistent with uploads in the last month or so. I'm trying to get in the habit of at least doing a video or two a week. If I look at this more as a job, and, I am actually more or less full-time YouTube right now since I'm not working. I'm just going to school at the moment. I lost my job early on in the pandemic, so that has allowed me to put a lot more time into this. So hopefully that'll translate into more views and more channel interaction. And I recently released a Patreon account link and all that stuff if you want to join that. No pressure at all, obviously. It's just sort of the next step for my channel. But anyway, we've reached the end of the video, so I want to thank you all for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you like what you see. Comment down below letting me know what your thoughts and ideas of how things are going in this section of the park so far, or any other part of this series. And subscribe if you haven't already. And with that said, you all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, night, etc., wherever you are in the world. And I will see you all next time.